What if I told you a whopping 72% of your success is related to something you've probably been ignoring? Now, this thing is the heavyweight champion that decides really if you're actually going to be a winner in the business you pursue. And this concept is probably something you've heard about, but you haven't actually realized the importance of it as well as how to build it and what exercises you can do to make yourself into a better person. And before I say what this thing is, you're probably going to say, I know what it is, and oh, I don't need any more information. I know what I'm doing. I know how to pay attention to it. But do you? Do you actually know the secrets to understanding the functions of how this works and how it actually plays a role in your business? Because it has a much larger impact than you think. This thing essentially is EI, emotional intelligence. But how do you actually use emotional intelligence in business to gain what you want? It all relies on power and influence. How do we motivate others? How do we control our climate to fit our needs and get what we want out of it? What's the big secret? Emotional intelligence is not just a general bland concept or a definition. It's a combination of self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills as a whole. Before we really get into it, I want to talk about the old school battle. Emotional intelligence versus intelligence quotient. Which is more important? I always say IQ gets you through school, but EI gets you through life. It's basically book smart versus street smart at the end of the day. And to be honest, a lot more business than we think relies on your street smarts or your emotional intelligence than it simply does for your school smarts. Studies show IQ can predict just a measly 20% of your success or higher, but emotional intelligence is the dark horse. It comes in strong and it makes up at least 72% of your wins. And that's science saying so, not just me. If you don't believe me, I'm gonna show you some proof of this. Think of people like Oprah Winfrey. Her entire brand is set up around empathy and caring toward other people. And she's made so much money, billions of dollars doing it. Think about any famous movie actor, right? Like Matthew McConaughey on an interview. If you notice how calm and relaxed he looks outside of the movies that he's in, when he's getting interviewed on Saturday Night Live, you can see that he is a person that is comfortable with his environment and comfortable communicating with other people. And not only that, but he understands what other people are looking for and how to bring them into his own sphere of comfort. Any famous politician, right, understands how to communicate with other people. They understand how to give people the words and the sayings that they want to convince them that they are in terms helping them get to their goals as their representative. Now, you're probably not a Fortune 500 CEO or a politician. However, using these abilities will get you the same type of influence that these amazingly powerful people have. These are some tips on how you can actually build emotional intelligence. A huge concept that you might have heard of that relates to emotional intelligence is political skill. Now, there's 4 types of political skill: social astuteness, social capital, interpersonal influence, and genuineness. Now, the first of which, social astuteness, is your ability to observe others in their environment. It's essentially you walking into the party and getting a read of the room, right? Seeing how much energy is there. Is everyone dancing? Is everyone going crazy and popping shots? Or is it more relaxed? Is everyone kind of having casual conversation and sitting down with each other? Your ability to gauge that climate and then act upon it is your first tool to influencing others and looking like you know what you're doing. The second one, social capital, is a little bit more intricate because it relies on longer term development. It's essentially your ability to make and hold connections with other people. The person shaking your hand when you walk in the party, maybe the host who invited you there, is a sign of social connection between other people. And that capital, right, essentially literally like the money in your bank, as in capital, the amount of connections you have and the higher value you have in other people gives yourself in turn value and the ability to influence other people with that value. Interpersonal influence is the ability to make a desired change in others. Someone who's really, imagine a hostage negotiator, right? They're really good at understanding what drives, the people that are inside the bank and what they want out of this interaction. And they can calm them down in a way where they feel like they're getting what they want, but actually it's playing to that person's needs. Being able to motivate others as the quarterback of the team, right, even though it's going to come back and make you look good, gives you the ability to go out and get things done based on your essentially charisma that you have. And finally, genuineness. This is one many people overlook, including myself for a long period of time. I always thought, it didn't really matter how real I was being as long as people liked me. And that was a huge flaw to make. And genuineness is the last one. Being able to convince other people that you have honest intentions about the way that you're interacting with them and you're not trying to, play one over on them lies deep inside of their heart and makes them build a connection with you because they genuinely from their heart like you, and that's where genuineness comes in. So the first way you can develop these skills is through experiential exercises. Go to business conferences, go to more parties, meet more people that have nothing in common with you, because not only are you going to understand how they work and what things stand out about them, but also how to communicate with people that talk or use different phrases than you, and your ability to navigate and adapt to those conversation patterns makes them like you more. So the next step, getting involved, relies on that, right? Ask questions that let you figure out who the person is before you go and try to influence them. They might be someone whose biggest pet peeve is other people talking over them or other people feeling like they're running the show. And if you don't understand that they like to maybe talk about themselves a bit too, you're going to rush into conversations trying to prove yourself to other people, and they're going to hate you for that. So the first way to actually get involved without overkilling it is I like to do the 70-30 rule. I like to ask, over 2 times as many questions essentially about the other person as I'm responding to them. So you should mainly spend 70% of the time, I would say for the first 5 minutes of meeting that person, just getting to know as much about them as possible. So when you actually wrote down everything that was said in the conversation, 70% of it was knowledge and information about them that you took in. And 30% is your basic responses to that, and then you commenting along how that might apply to you. The next way, case analysis, is learning from other people. So not only listening to people like my stories that have gone through these things, but also expert communicators, right? Find people like politicians, right, that like to bring in personal stories or personal anecdotes, or motivational speakers that like to reference things in the past that they've learned from that you can use to build better connections with other people. Not only that, but talk to your buddies, that date around a lot, and ask them, when was the time that dating went really horribly for you on the first date? Or what's some things you could tell me that you've learned in your experience going out and meeting people? Finally is role playing. And this one seems a little corny or cringy, but it can actually be really, really great to use. This comes more into play in the business world where people, for instance, in sales want to increase their skills without blowing, potential leads. So, right, you want to buy a house off someone, you're going to go practice with, a partner that's on your sales team to pretend they're the seller and you're the buyer, and you can essentially overcome objections and ask more questions to inspire and gain influence on the other person's ability to sell to you. Social monitoring is pretty close to social astuteness, I would say, but social monitoring is your ability to read the room, right, and say, okay, if this is the vibe of the room, how much of myself do I change to meet this? Because there's honestly pros and cons to doing that. So again, social astuteness is simply just observing others and gauging the climate and doing nothing else. But social monitoring is figuring out how to act in that situation. So I took a test a while ago, and the max score for social monitoring was 18, and I think I scored a 17. But since then, I've worked on fixing this a little bit toward the median point. But high social monitoring is essentially you saying, okay, the climate's really hyped up right now. I'm going to change myself. I'm going to change my behavior to essentially be the life of the party, right? And the person that everyone's looking at to gain, motivation and excitement about what's going on. Or if it's a very mellow environment, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to bring myself to that point where everybody else feels comfortable with me because I'm setting and engaging in that tone that's being shared. Right? You can all think of the person that, you're in the library or something and they're being really loud and you're like, this person is terrible at just reading the room. And you might think that, but in reality, they're really just a low social monitor, which isn't a bad thing either. It can honestly be a really good thing as well. The trick is to be right in the middle or have the ability to fluctuate between both of these. But low social monitors, think of like someone like Thomas Shelby, right? He's constantly in his character, in his frame, and he's a stoic essentially, where there might be a lot going on. Someone might have a gun to his head, but he's not going to react and share in that energy that's going on toward him. He's going to be very calm and relaxed because he knows who he is and he sticks to that. So a high social monitor is going to ask questions like, how can I fit into this environment? And how can I get others in this environment to recognize me as being one of them? And a low social monitor would ask things like, how can I be me in this environment? So there's a difference there, right? Because people want to be liked and they want to be participating in what's going on and be seen as someone that's cool with what's going on. And that brings them a lot of benefits because they'll gain a lot of relationships from that. And people will see them as someone that they can go to, someone that gets it, someone that is cool with the setting, right? But the downsides of that are they're not going to always see you as genuine because you're always trying to fit in or essentially look cool to them, even though they might not outright say it. A low social monitor on the other end is going to be someone that people can trust more, right? Because they don't feel the need to want to fit in. Think about alpha versus sigma, right? Like the alpha male is going to be constantly trying to set the tone and be the one that everyone's paying attention to. And they're going to have a lot of people engaging with them because of that. And that's good, especially in business for building relationships. But it also makes people think that you're just trying to be, the teacher's pet or the favorite at work or the person that, always has the spotlight on them because they want the most influence from that. And then other people at your level especially might resent you for it. On the low side, the benefits of that are that people see you as more honest because you don't necessarily care and you're the sigma, right, that is constantly in their own frame and doesn't have to impress everyone. So other people will gravitate and find that very attractive and interesting with that person because they don't feel the need to have to mold to that setting. But in contrast, they're not going to get as many relationships and connections out of that. And they're going to find a harder time building more connections. But I would say with connections overall, the high social monitor has more connections, but the low social monitor has more genuine connections. In a dating aspect, right, the high social monitor is going to be someone who constantly gets women. They're going to be going on a lot of dates, but they're going to find a harder time with it keeping to a long-term perspective. And this low social monitor might, upset a lot of women on initial dates just being honest about what they want, but when they find a good partner, they're going to be more loyal in the end. So keeping both of those concepts in mind with the different types of political skill, you can maximize the way that you communicate with other people. I would recommend, now that we define the types of social monitoring, to pick the one that is naturally you and stick with it. In the past, I've tried to change it a lot, like I've said, and I've found it really hard to continue relationships that I've had in the past because of it. When I start being really honest with people that, I had genuine connections with because I was a high social monitor and they liked the energy that I was bringing, they're going to be like, why is this guy being such a dick? And why is he not really care anymore about, our relationship? And it's going to drive a lot of questions. But on the other side, right, they might be like, why is this guy continuing to just, butter my bread and not give me honest feedback about how I'm doing? So you have to pick the one that's going to be best for you and kind of mold yourself and continue to reinforce that. But also being conscious about the fact that this is going to have an impact on you in this way, and there are certain things you can do to mitigate that. So now that we talked about high and low social monitoring, I want you to set goals for yourself. I want you to figure out where you are on that spectrum of high and low and what you can do to better impact your results with other people in conversation. Now, the final part I want to talk about is understanding clients and how this applies to you making your business more successful and getting more sales. So again, the difference between emotional intelligence and intelligence quotient is that emotional intelligence is more of your street smarts. It's your ability to think outside the literal textbook from school. You can't do emotional intelligence without regular intelligence because your ability to understand why people think certain things and the actual science behind it and their motivations and understand how the logic connects is your ability to then influence that person and connect with them emotionally toward that goal. So when you go out in business, I want you to first start by asking questions. The best way to build a business, and something I didn't get for a long time, is by caring about the people that are buying from you. And that seems like common sense, right? The customer comes first. But if you actually think about it, it's hard to do that and also build a profitable business. Because you could give all the quality in the world, but it's hard to do that at a price that'll actually work for the customer. But here's what I believe. Building quality first and putting all your work into one product will not only result in that customer being happy, but because of that, it decreases your other costs because customers are now going to be talking about how great your product is. And that product's then going to be word of mouth spread to their near friends that need it too. And then soon you're gonna have more people coming into you. And that's true with everything, right? You could be selling handbooks or houses. The more value someone gets out of their conversation, and then the more whatever your solution is aligns with their emotional needs, they're going to feel more motivated to actually follow through on the purchase, but also share that idea and that help, that emotional help you gave them with other people. McDonald's and Morton's Steakhouse are similar but different. They're both restaurants, but McDonald's is to minimize, the price for people and maximize the amount of transactions, while Morton's is to maximize the quality and to maximize the price. But in doing so, they're both successful because they both give people what they want on the quality spectrum. But there is a relationship between higher quality and the exponential willingness people are to pay for things. An ice bath might cost $4 or $5, but people are usually a lot more willing to go into a massage to help their muscles, even though it's $100 or $120 and exponentially more because the quality of it is so much higher. So let's go back to where we started. Emotional intelligence drives businesses. It means that at the end of the day, you're gonna understand your customer and what they want, and you can give that to them simply by paying attention and asking leading questions. Being able to first understand what other people want and then use that motivation to guide them to a solution that they feel like they earned or they led themselves toward will make you successful at the end of the day than simply putting something out on a website for sale. When you understand that concept, you'll never lose that business again.